long time, the Red Death had ravaged the land, a plague unlike any other in its deadly swiftness and sheer terror. It manifested through blood, its telltale mark and horrifying essence. Victims suffered sharp pains, sudden dizziness, and then copious bleeding from the pores. Scarlet stains covered their bodies, especially their faces, marking them as outcasts beyond help or pity. The whole ordeal, from infection to death, lasted barely 30 minutes. But Prince Prospero remained unbothered. Bold, clever, and indulgent, he turned his back on the dying world. When half his people had succumbed to the plague, he gathered 1,000 healthy, lively friends, men and women of his court, and secluded them in one of his fortified abbeys. This wasn't just any abbey. It was a grand, almost surreal masterpiece designed by the prince himself, reflecting his eccentric and extravagant tastes. The abbey was surrounded by towering walls with iron gates. Once everyone was inside, they sealed the gates with welding torches and hammers, cutting themselves off from the horrors outside. They weren't just locking out the plague, they were shutting away fear and despair. The place was fully stocked, with enough supplies to ride out the storm. Prospero made sure his refuge offered not just safety, but endless entertainment. There were jesters, dancers, musicians, and feasts galore. Wine flowed freely, and laughter echoed through the halls. Outside, the Red Death spread relentlessly, but inside, life seemed untouched. 5 or 6 months into their seclusion, as the plague raged outside, Prince Prospero hosted a lavish masquerade ball. It was an extraordinary spectacle of indulgence and opulence. Picture this. The party took place across 7 rooms, each decorated in a unique and vivid color scheme. Unlike most palaces, where rooms aligned to create long, uninterrupted views, these chambers twisted and turned, breaking the line of sight. Each had a Gothic window draped in matching stained glass, glowing with the same color as its respective room. The first room was a deep blue, followed by purple, green, orange, white, and violet. But the 7th room, oh, the 7th, was unlike any other. Draped in black velvet, it exuded a foreboding atmosphere. The stained glass here was blood red, casting an eerie glow over the space. No one lingered there for long. The combination of the shadows and crimson light unsettled even the boldest of guests. A massive ebony clock stood in the black room. Its pendulum swung with a slow, heavy tick, and every hour its chimes rang out with a deep, resonant tone. The sound was so haunting that it brought the entire party to a halt. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, laughter faded, and the orchestra fell silent. Dancers froze in place, pale and anxious, as the clock counted the passing hours. Only when the echoes faded did the revelers nervously resume their festivities, laughing off their unease until the next hour. Despite this unsettling ritual, the party was a dazzling display of excess. Prospero had poured his heart into every detail of the event, and the costumes were spectacular, grotesque, extravagant, and surreal. Some were beautiful, others were bizarre or outright horrifying. It was as if every strange dream had come to life, moving and swirling through the rooms. But as midnight approached and the clock began its slow, deliberate chimes, the atmosphere shifted. The revelers grew quieter, their laughter forced. This time, when the echoes died away, they noticed something, or rather, someone new among them. A figure had appeared, unnoticed until now. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people pointed and murmured in shock and disapproval. This wasn't just any party crasher. The figure was tall, shrouded from head to toe in a funeral shroud, and its mask was horrifyingly lifelike. A corpse's face, pale and rigid. Worse, the figure's costume was splattered with blood, as if it embodied the Red Death itself. When Prince Prospero saw the figure, his initial fear turned to fury. His voice boomed across the rooms. "Who dares mock us with this blasphemous costume? Seize him, unmask him, and we'll hang him at dawn." But as Prospero barked his orders, no one moved. The crowd parted as the figure slowly made its way through the rooms, its movements deliberate and unnerving. It passed within inches of the prince, but no one dared touch it. The guests clung to the walls, paralyzed by fear, as the figure marched from the blue room to the purple, then to the green, orange, white, and violet. Enraged and ashamed of his guests' cowardice, Prospero grabbed a dagger and charged after the intruder. He chased it through the rooms, but as they entered the black chamber, the figure turned to face him. The prince let out a cry, staggered, and fell dead to the floor, his weapon clattering beside him. The guests, now desperate and terrified, surged into the black room, determined to confront the figure. But when they tore away the shroud and mask, they found nothing, no body, no face, nothing tangible. The Red Death had entered their sanctuary, and one by one, the revelers dropped to the floor, their bodies marked by the same scarlet stains. As the last guest fell, the clock stopped ticking. The fires in the braziers died out, and in the darkness, silence reigned. The Red Death had claimed everything. The grand spectacle of Prince Prospero's fortress of indulgence was no more. The once vivid rooms, alive with laughter, music, and dreams, now stood eerily silent, cloaked in the finality of death. The vibrant colors that had painted the walls and windows seemed to dim, as if drained by the same relentless force that had consumed the revelers. The ebony clock, once a macabre centerpiece of the masquerade, loomed in the black room. Its pendulum hung motionless, frozen in time. The echo of its last chime lingered like a ghostly whisper, fading into the stillness that now engulfed the abbey. No one would ever hear its solemn toll again. The 7 rooms, once filled with light, motion, and revelry, now felt suffocating in their emptiness. The blue room's tranquility had turned cold. The purple's regal charm seemed oppressive. The green, orange, white, and violet rooms stood hollow, their former warmth replaced with an eerie chill. And the black room, where it had all come to a horrifying climax, now seemed to absorb every trace of remaining energy, swallowing it into a void of despair. Outside the fortified walls, the plague raged on, indifferent to the hubris of the powerful and the desperate attempts to cheat death. The Red Death was not an enemy that could be locked out or ignored. It was relentless, inevitable, a silent predator waiting for its moment. Prince Prospero's arrogance, his belief that wealth, privilege, and isolation could shield him from the inevitable, had been his undoing. The revelers, drunk on their false sense of security, had danced blindly into the jaws of their doom. They had sought refuge from fear, but found it waiting for them in the shadows of their own making. As the flames in the braziers flickered and died, leaving only darkness, the abbey became a tomb. The Red Death ruled, unchallenged, over the lifeless halls and the still bodies that lay scattered across the once vibrant floors. It was a grim reminder of the fragility of life and the futility of defying fate. And so, in the end, darkness, silence, and death held dominion over all. The desolation of the abbey was absolute. Nothing stirred within its walls, save for the occasional whisper of a draught slipping through the once sealed gates. The grandeur that had defined Prince Prospero's creation now seemed absurd, its opulence reduced to a grotesque irony. Each room, once alive with color and movement, was a monument to folly, a silent testament to the fleeting nature of power and privilege. The blue room, its windows once radiant with calm hues, now seemed to murmur sorrow. The green room's vibrancy had dulled to a sickly hue, a reflection of the sickness that had claimed its occupants. The orange room's warmth had become the glow of decay, and the white room's purity now felt like a cruel mockery of innocence lost. The black room, where the final horror had played out, seemed alive in a way the others were not. Its oppressive shadows lingered like specters, and the blood-red light that had once seeped through the stained glass seemed to hover in the air, a lingering reminder of the terror that had unfolded there. The massive ebony clock, stood like a sentinel over the room's lifeless expanse, its silence more deafening than its once mournful chimes. Outside, the Red Death showed no signs of abating. The lands beyond the abbey's walls were empty now, devoid of life save for the wind that carried the faint cries of the forgotten. Villages lay abandoned, cities crumbled into disarray, and the world that Prince Prospero had sought to leave behind was now unrecognizable. But there was something timeless in the stillness of the abbey. The Red Death had not only claimed the lives of those within, it had claimed the very soul of the place. No future traveler would ever breach its gates, and no tale would truly capture the magnitude of what had transpired. The abbey had become a mausoleum, a frozen moment in time where hubris met its inevitable downfall. And somewhere, in the vast emptiness of the world, the Red Death continued its relentless march. It had no face, no form, no name beyond what humanity had given it. It was not bound by walls or borders, not swayed by wealth or status. It was the great equalizer, a reminder that no matter how high humanity may rise, it can never truly escape the shadow of mortality. In the end, the story of Prince Prospero and his doomed masquerade faded into legend. A cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. It became a ghostly echo of a time when life dared to mock death, only to be consumed by it. And though the abbey crumbled with the passage of years, the memory of its tragedy lingered, an indelible mark on the pages of time. Darkness, silence, and death reigned eternal. As the abbey decayed, time wore its walls down to rubble, and the vibrant colors of its infamous rooms faded into the dust. Nature, indifferent to the tragedies of humanity, began to reclaim the land. Ivy crawled over the cracked stones, and wildflowers bloomed where the tapestries once hung. The grandeur of Prince Prospero's vision was swallowed by the very earth he had tried to defy. Yet the tale of the Red Death persisted, carried not by survivors, there were none, but by whispers that seemed to rise from the ruins themselves. Travelers who passed near the site spoke of an unnatural stillness, a chill in the air that didn't match the seasons. Some claimed to hear the faint tolling of a clock, though no clock remained. Others swore they saw fleeting shadows moving among the overgrown halls, their forms faintly tinged with red. The legend took on a life of its own. It was said that the spirit of Prince Prospero still wandered the ruins, his arrogance forever binding him to the place where he had fallen. Others believed that the Red Death itself lingered, not as a plague, but as an entity, an ever-watchful force waiting for humanity to repeat its folly. The ruins became a place of both fear and fascination. Some dared to explore them, seeking proof of the tales or simply drawn by morbid curiosity. Those who ventured too close often returned pale and shaken, unwilling to speak of what they had seen, or didn't return at all. The abbey became a forbidden ground, its name erased from maps, but etched deeply into the memories of those who lived nearby. In time, the Red Death came to symbolize more than a plague. It became a metaphor for unchecked hubris, a chilling reminder of the consequences of denying one's own mortality. Poets wrote of it, artists painted their interpretations, and storytellers wove it into their darkest tales. Yet no rendition could fully capture the horror of the original events. Centuries later, when the ruins were little more than a mound of stone and soil, a group of researchers decided to investigate the site. They were historians and scientists, driven by a desire to uncover the truth behind the legend. They unearthed fragments of the abbey, pieces of stained glass still faintly colored, and shards of the ebony clock's face. But their findings only deepened the mystery. One researcher, a skeptic who dismissed the supernatural elements of the tale, noted something strange as they examined the Black Room's remains. The soil seemed darker there, almost as if stained. Nearby, a faint, almost imperceptible ticking sound filled the air. The others heard it too, but none could locate its source. The group left the site hastily, abandoning their excavation. Whatever they had hoped to find, they realized, some things are better left undisturbed. The story of the Red Death remained intact, its details sharpened by time and terror. And somewhere, in the quiet shadows of forgotten places, the essence of the Red Death lingered, unseen but not gone. It awaited the day when humanity, in its arrogance, might once again believe it could outwit the inevitable. For in the end, darkness, silence, and death are patient. They have all the time in the world. As the years turned to centuries, the Abbey and its tragic legacy became more than a cautionary tale. They evolved into an enduring myth. The Red Death became a spectre woven into the fabric of human imagination, a grim symbol of mortality lurking just beneath the veneer of progress and ambition. Generations spoke of the Abbey's ruins as cursed ground. Farmers avoided the land, unwilling to till soil they claimed was tainted. Children dared one another to venture near, though most never got past the first thicket of tangled trees that had grown around it. A local superstition grew. Anyone who stayed too long near the ruins might bring the plague back into the world. And while science dismissed such fears as unfounded, the unease around the place was impossible to shake. Then in the modern era, curiosity once again led people to the site. A filmmaker, captivated by the legend, sought to recreate the story of the Red Death in a movie. She envisioned vivid costumes, shadowy halls, and a haunting soundtrack. Determined to capture the true essence of the tale, she insisted on shooting parts of the film on location at the Abbey's remains. From the outset, things didn't feel right. The crew reported strange malfunctions with their equipment. Cameras refused to focus, sound systems picked up faint whispers, and batteries drained inexplicably. One actor, dressed as a masked reveler, claimed to feel an invisible hand brush against his shoulder during a scene. Another refused to return after spotting what she swore was a shadow moving behind the ruins when no one else was there. The director brushed off their fears, chalking it up to nerves and the eerie atmosphere of the place. But as filming progressed, the tension escalated. A key scene, a recreation of the clock striking midnight, ended abruptly when the massive prop clock fell to the ground without warning, shattering on impact. The crew later found their footage of the scene corrupted, though no one could explain how. The final straw came during the last night of filming. As the cast and crew worked late to wrap up production, the air grew unnaturally cold. One by one, people began to notice a faint sound, a rhythmic ticking, like the echo of a clock. It seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then, as if on cue, the wind picked up, carrying with it a low, mournful sound that resembled a distant chime. Panic rippled through the group. Some fled, leaving equipment behind. Those who stayed long enough to pack up swore that as they turned to leave, they saw a figure in the distance, tall, cloaked, and unmoving. It didn't follow, but its mere presence left them chilled to their core. The project was abandoned. The director refused to speak about what happened, and the unfinished film became another piece of the Abbey's dark legacy. Rumors swirled online, with conspiracy theorists speculating about cursed footage and supernatural interference. Years later, paranormal investigators descended on the site, drawn by tales of the filmmaker's failed endeavor. Equipped with the latest technology, they sought to prove or debunk the stories once and for all. What they found, however, mirrored the accounts of those before them. Strange sounds, inexplicable phenomena, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Their most chilling discovery came from an audio recording. While reviewing the footage, one investigator noticed faint rhythmic beats in the background. Slowing the playback, they realized it wasn't random noise, it was the ticking of a clock. At the end of the recording, a single deep chime rang out, followed by silence. The group left the ruins and never returned. Their findings reignited interest in the Red Death's tale, but no one dared attempt another exploration. The ruins stand to this day, shrouded by trees and silence, a place where time itself seems to have stopped. The ticking is no longer heard, or perhaps no one stays long enough to hear it. The legend of Prince Prospero and the Red Death lives on, a timeless reminder that no matter how humanity evolves, some forces, mortality, hubris and fear, remain constant. And deep within the shadows of the Black Room, in a place untouched by time or reason, the Red Death waits, silent, patient, eternal. Though the Abbey's ruins seem to fade into obscurity, the legend of the Red Death never truly disappeared. It thrived in whispers, campfire stories, and the quiet warnings of elders who had heard too many tales to dismiss them as mere superstition. The site, overgrown and seemingly dormant, became a paradox. Abandoned yet alive with an energy no one could define. Decades after the failed film project, a tech startup specializing in immersive virtual reality set its sights on the Red Death legend. Their goal? To recreate the fateful masquerade ball in stunning detail, allowing users to experience the opulence, terror and mystery of Prince Prospero's final night. They called it the Masquerade Red Death VR experience, and its tagline promised, "Step into the story, but beware what you bring back." The project quickly gained traction. Developers painstakingly recreated the 7 rooms, the vibrant colors, and even the ticking of the infamous ebony clock. To heighten the realism, they used advanced AI to simulate the eerie atmosphere, right down to the sound of faint whispers in the Black Room. For the climactic scene, users would confront the mysterious figure of the Red Death, a digital ghost programmed to send shivers down the spine. To make the experience authentic, the company secured permission to scan the Abbey ruins. Using drones and advanced imaging technology, they mapped every crumbling stone and broken window. But from the moment the scans began, strange glitches plagued their systems. Equipment malfunctioned, data files corrupted, and some drone operators reported feeling uneasy, as if they were being watched. Undeterred, the team pressed on, dismissing the incidents as technical hiccups. They launched the VR experience to widespread acclaim. Users marveled at the immersive detail, though many admitted the Black Room made them uncomfortable. Some even reported hearing the ticking of the clock long after they had removed their headsets. But then, the complaints started. Players began experiencing vivid nightmares after using the VR system. They described dreams of walking through the 7 rooms, only to find themselves trapped in the black chamber as the clock struck midnight. Some claimed to see a figure, tall, cloaked and motionless, standing just beyond the edge of their vision. A few even reported waking up with unexplained red marks on their skin. One user, a self-proclaimed skeptic, shared his experience on a forum. "It's just a game," he wrote. "But last night, I swear I heard the clock ticking in my apartment. It wasn't my imagination. I know what I heard." The company dismissed these claims as coincidence, but internal records told a different story. Developers began quitting the project, citing unsettling experiences during testing. One programmer, who had worked on the Black Room's AI, left a cryptic resignation note. "It's not just code. Something's in there." Then, the unthinkable happened. A prominent streamer, known for testing horror games, decided to broadcast their playthrough of The Masquerade. Everything seemed fine until they reached the Black Room. As the streamer described feeling watched, their camera feed cut to static. When it resumed, they were gone, their chair empty. The live stream continued for hours, showing nothing but an empty room, the faint sound of a clock ticking in the background. The disappearance sparked a frenzy. The company pulled the game from shelves, citing unforeseen technical issues, and ceased operations within weeks. Investigations into the streamer's disappearance yielded no answers, and conspiracy theories ran rampant. Was it a publicity stunt, a tragic accident, or something far darker? In the wake of the scandal, The Red Death legend found new life, spreading across social media and forums. Some claimed the VR project had awakened something dormant in the Abbey ruins. Others believed the Red Death had escaped its confines, finding new victims in the digital age. The ruins themselves remained untouched, the site now fenced off and marked with warning signs. Yet visitors still reported strange occurrences. Faint chimes at midnight, shadowy figures glimpsed in the distance, and an unshakable feeling of being watched. Local authorities dismissed these stories as urban legends, but the unease lingered. For those who knew the story well, it was clear the Red Death wasn't confined to history or legend. It had adapted, finding new ways to remind humanity of its presence. Whether in crumbling abbeys, haunting dreams, or the flicker of a digital screen, it remained patient, waiting for the next dance to begin. And in the silence that followed, the clock's final chime echoed on, faint but eternal. The story of the Red Death continued to evolve, no longer just a tale of a doomed prince and a masquerade, but a living, breathing mystery that seemed to defy explanation. Scholars, skeptics, and thrill-seekers alike tried to unravel its threads, delving into the intersection of history, legend, and the paranormal. What was once an old-world fable had become a haunting question of whether certain places or events could retain a malevolent energy, timeless and inescapable. A group of independent investigators, blending technology with paranormal research, decided to revisit the ruins, now long abandoned and overgrown. They called themselves the Midnight Watchers, a nod to their nocturnal investigations of infamous sites around the world. Their mission was clear: to document any remaining traces of the supernatural and to determine if the Red Death legend still held sway in the ruins of Prince Prospero's Abbey. Armed with cutting-edge equipment, including thermal cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, and even a custom-built clock replica to mimic the ebony chime, they set out to prove or debunk the myths surrounding the Red Death. The team arrived at dusk, setting up a small base camp near the Abbey's outer wall. The forest surrounding the ruins was unnaturally quiet, as if the wildlife avoided the area altogether. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they began their exploration, stepping cautiously into the overgrown remains of the Abbey. The investigators moved through the ruins, guided by historical records that detailed the infamous 7 rooms. The first chamber, where blue-tinted light once danced through stained glass, was now little more than a stone skeleton. Still, the team's equipment picked up strange anomalies: cold spots, flickering EMF readings, and faint rhythmic sounds that seemed to echo beneath the wind. As they progressed through the purple, green, orange, and white rooms, the atmosphere grew heavier. Team members reported feelings of unease and disorientation. One even claimed to hear faint laughter, though no one else heard it. By the time they reached the violet chamber, the air was thick with tension, as if the ruins themselves were aware of their presence. The black room was last. The investigators hesitated before entering. Even in ruins, the room seemed to radiate an oppressive darkness. The remnants of the black velvet drapes hung like tattered shadows, and shards of blood-red glass from the once dominant windows glittered in the faint moonlight. Setting up the replica clock in the room's center, the team began their experiment. They synchronized the clock to strike midnight and waited. The air grew colder, their breaths visible despite the summer warmth. The rhythmic ticking of the clock filled the chamber, a sound unnervingly loud in the stillness. As the clock struck midnight, the replica's chime echoed through the ruins. But it wasn't alone. A second chime followed, a deeper, more resonant sound, as if from a clock far older and more powerful. The team froze. The second chime didn't come from their equipment, and then they saw it. At first it was just a shadow, barely perceptible against the blackened walls. But as the faint light shifted, the shadow grew, taking shape. A tall figure emerged, draped in a dark, flowing cloak. Its mask was pale, lifeless, and grotesquely human, a corpse frozen mid-decay. The figure moved with deliberate grace, gliding across the floor toward the team. Panic set in. One investigator screamed and bolted for the exit, only to collapse at the threshold, gasping as if the air itself had turned to poison. Others scrambled to collect their equipment, but their devices malfunctioned, the screens flashing static or going completely black. The figure stopped at the center of the room, directly beneath the chime's source. It raised one skeletal hand and pointed at the clock. The device, which had been faithfully ticking away, stopped abruptly. Silence fell, oppressive and absolute. And then, one by one, the investigators began to feel it, a creeping chill spreading through their veins, as if their very blood had turned to ice. They stumbled, fell, and clawed at the ground, their vision blurring as crimson spots appeared on their skin. The last thing any of them heard before losing consciousness was the echo of the final chime, a sound that reverberated not just in the room, but in their very souls. When dawn broke, the forest was silent again. A passing hiker found the team unconscious near the ruins, their equipment scattered and damaged. They were rushed to the nearest hospital, where doctors were baffled by their symptoms. Each bore strange red marks, eerily reminiscent of the Red Death's victims, though they eventually recovered without explanation. The investigators refused to speak of what they had experienced, disbanding their group and vanishing from public view. Their footage, what little survived, showed only fragments, flickering shadows, distorted sounds, and a single frame of a cloaked figure standing in the black room, its mask turned toward the camera. The abbey was sealed off permanently, declared unsafe by local authorities. But those who live nearby still speak of the place in hushed tones. They claim the clock still chimes at midnight, a faint sound carried on the wind. And somewhere, deep within the ruins, the Red Death waits as timeless as ever. It doesn't need an invitation. It simply watches, biding its time, until the next foolish soul dares to challenge the inevitable. Because, as always, darkness, silence, and death reign eternal. The legend of the Red Death, rather than fading into obscurity, seemed to thrive in the modern age. Whispers spread like wildfire across the internet, where forums, videos, and blogs debated the truth behind the abbey's haunting and the fate of those who dared venture too close. The investigators who survived the Black Room's horrors refused interviews, but their silence only fueled speculation. What had they seen? And why did they bear the strange marks? Proof, some claimed, that the Red Death was no mere story. The footage from their ill-fated exploration surfaced in fragmented leaks. Online sleuths pieced together the clips, creating a patchwork of eerie images, faint shadows, distorted audio of what sounded like clock chimes, and a single frozen frame of the cloaked figure in the black room. The image became infamous, known simply as the Cloak, and theories abounded. Was it a spirit? An energy imprint of the plague? Or something older, darker, and beyond comprehension? Despite the warnings, or perhaps because of them, a new wave of adventurers emerged, determined to uncover the truth. Urban explorers, thrill seekers, and so-called paranormal influencers descended on the area, each trying to outdo the last with their exploits. Most encountered nothing but eerie silence and the oppressive atmosphere of the ruins. A few claimed to hear faint whispers or ticking sounds, but escaped unscathed. And then there were the others. A small but growing number of explorers vanished without explanation. Their last known locations often placed them near the abbey. Police conducted searches but found no trace of the missing, save for scattered belongings and the occasional smear of what looked disturbingly like dried blood. One particularly chilling case involved a live streamer who set up cameras in all 7 rooms of the abbey, intending to spend the night there. The stream began normally, with viewers chatting excitedly as the host wandered through the ruins. But as the night wore on, things took a darker turn. The host began to complain of a sudden chill, even as viewers noticed strange, flickering lights in the background. At exactly midnight, the stream cut to static. When it returned seconds later, the cameras showed only empty rooms. The host was gone. Authorities arrived the next day to find no sign of the streamer, though their equipment remained in perfect condition, eerily arranged in a circle in the Black Room. The disappearance reignited global fascination with the legend, spawning countless podcasts, documentaries, and investigations. The Abbey became the subject of digital recreations, art projects, and even augmented reality games, despite its growing reputation as cursed ground. The most unsettling development, however, came from a seemingly unrelated corner of the internet. Users on several social media platforms began reporting a bizarre phenomenon. Random notifications at midnight with a single message. Tick-tock. Some dismissed it as a prank, while others swore it was connected to the Red Death legend. A few even claimed the notifications were accompanied by fleeting visions, a cloaked figure in their peripheral vision, gone as quickly as it appeared. Security experts investigated and found no evidence of hacking or malware. The phenomenon seemed to defy explanation, adding a new, chilling layer to the legend. As humanity marched deeper into the digital era, the story of the Red Death continued to mutate, transcending time, space, and even technology. Scholars debated whether the legend was a warning about mortality, a reflection of human hubris, or something far more sinister, an entity that adapts and thrives in the cracks of our arrogance. The Abbey itself remains a forbidden zone, overrun by nature and shadowed by fear. Locals still avoid the area, and the few who venture close claim the air feels heavy, as if the ruins themselves are alive. At night, some say, the faint tolling of a clock can still be heard, growing louder with each passing chime. And those brave or foolish enough to listen say the final chime is not a sound at all, but a whisper, soft and unmistakable. I am always waiting. The Red Death is not bound by walls or time. It lingers, eternal and unrelenting, a chilling reminder that no matter how far we advance, how much we build, or how fiercely we defy, there are forces that will always remind us of our mortality. And as long as humans dare to laugh in the face of death, the Red Death will always be there, waiting for the next dance to begin. The Red Death story, whether viewed as legend, cautionary tale, or supernatural truth, remains etched in the collective consciousness. It whispers through the ruins of the Abbey, lingers in the ticking of unseen clocks, and hides in the shadows of stories passed down through generations. Perhaps it is a reminder that no fortress, no technology, no wealth, and no arrogance can shield humanity from its own frailty. Or perhaps it is more, a force that adapts, grows, and thrives in the spaces where fear and hubris intersect. The ruins stand silent, watched over by trees and shadows, their secrets locked away. But in the quiet of midnight, when the world is still, the faint echo of a clock's chime may yet carry on the wind, a sound that transcends time. And so, the Red Death waits, silent, patient, eternal.